Hi everyone, this is Lachlan Howard and welcome to Amusement Tomorrow out of Central Ohio, and here with my first ever narrated review and video. What better coaster to dive deep into the depths of reviewing than Maverick? Maverick is located at the legendary Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, which is just about 2 hours away from where I live. Maverick is manufactured by Intamin Rides and is their Blitz coaster model. Before 2018, many considered Maverick to be the best ride at Cedar Point. Now that Steel Vengeance stands right next to Maverick and is largely considered the best coaster on Earth, Maverick seems to fall into its shadow among people who have yet to visit Cedar Point. Because this ride has stats that are nothing to write home about, it doesn't get too much consideration among the general public either, but coaster enthusiasts seem to never get enough of it. Because I live so close, Maverick is one of the coasters that I have ridden more than most, so I have quite the developed opinion about it. Keep watching for Maverick's overall score and placements. I'm going to start with Maverick's stats, but there isn't really anything crazy going on here. The ride is 105 feet tall with a 100-foot drop. While the drop isn't massive, the angle of descent is beyond vertical at 95 degrees. This drop is fantastic, and in my opinion, it is only because of the way you climb it. Maverick doesn't have a chain lift hill. Instead, the ride uses LSM systems to propel it up the lift hill pretty quickly. Iron Shark at Galveston Pier in Texas has the same 100-foot, 95-degree drop as Maverick, but after its lift, it reaches its top speed of 52 miles an hour. Maverick ends up reaching 57 even with its heavier and longer train because it has the launch at the beginning. Many question whether this first set of LSMs is a launch though because of its speed. I personally call it one. Most Blitz coasters of today have more than 2 launches, and even if Maverick doesn't have a very quick first launch, it definitely still is one. Its purpose is to get it to the top, but it also increases the speed after the drop of what it would have been with a chain. The total track length for Maverick is 4,450 feet, and it takes a total of 2 minutes and 30 seconds to traverse the whole layout. Now, this duration is very rough. Yes, 2 minutes and 30 seconds is the park's official statement on how long the ride takes, but it's more like just 2 minutes. The length feels perfect to me either way though. Maverick to me is a perfect length and duration, unlike a coaster such as Valraven, which is located at Cedar Point as well. There are 2 inversions on the ride and they happen very quickly at the end of the first half of the layout. The top speed on Maverick is hit in the middle of the ride on the second launch. It hits 70 miles per hour, which is very fast compared to other coasters of the size. Maverick is a very small coaster, but it really packs in a ton. To be honest, I really don't think this coaster will be much without the second launch though, which I will get into later along with those 2 inversions. The ride has a maximum capacity of 1,200 riders an hour, which is great. Is it fantastic for a park like Cedar Point? Not really, but it does its job of getting people through while still keeping a wait time consistently high to just cram people into its queue, keep them out of other queues and off the midways. There are definitely coasters with higher capacity, especially from the manufacturers of Bolliger and Mabillard, and most other Intamin models, but it could be a lot worse. The stats are nothing crazy, but Maverick was one of the first coasters to prove that you don't need to be super tall or super fast to have a good ride, which was certainly a running theme for Cedar Point editions before this coaster was put in. Cedar Point had originally started the tall and fast trend among parks with Magnum XL 200 and then later Millennium Force and Top of the Dragster, but with Maverick, they started a trend which focused on layout more than speed and height. Getting into the layout, I'm going to start off in the station. Maverick has a dual loading platform in the station. This means they fit 2 trains into the station and can load both at the same time. The ride has 6 trains, which are 3 cars of 4 riders, which would be nothing for the capacity if they could only load 1 train at a time. Without the dual loading capabilities, the capacity per hour would severely decrease. In any row, you get absolutely launched over the drop, but in the back, you feel it the most. For being so small, the drop is so good, and is one of my personal favorite drops of all time. It is so steep and so fast that the airtime is just glorious. You don't even realize what happened to you the first few times you ride it. It's absolutely fantastic. Right after the drop, you get thrown into these amazing sharp turns that you go through so quickly. You go through these turns at 57 miles per hour as previously stated, but it feels like you're going 100. You most likely don't even really notice, but you are going through some rock work, which is some of the minimal theming you will find during the ride, and it looks alright, but looked better in the promotional videos. After these turns, you fly into a very sharp airtime hill. You can see how shallow it is in and out, but how pointy the crest is, and this is probably the second best airtime moment on the ride, just under the drop. After this quick hill, you do a small turn into your two inversions. The inversions are named together as a twisted horseshoe roll, and basically, they are two corkscrew type elements that happen quickly together with only a quick 180-degree turn separating them. The inversions are great, but certainly not the best part of the ride. They are very forceful in and out, but in the middle they are quite graceful, which is sort of refreshing during the fast-paced and forceful Maverick layout. After those is another fast turn into brakes. Now, this is certainly not the end of the ride, even though there is a brief pause of just nothingness. This set of brakes goes underneath the station into a small building, which has some theming with like lanterns and such, but nothing too amazing. There is a burst of sound, and then this is my personal favorite part of the ride, the second launch. Here, you reach your top speed of 70 miles per hour, but it is not a very long strip of launch, so you accelerate very quickly. People often criticize the LSM launch for not being forceful, but they must be forgetting about this launch, because it is so good. You feel like you're just being shoved out of this tunnel so fast. It is very intense, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. As the first train launches, the second train is getting ready to depart. After the launch, you have a super intense and sharp blinding turn as you ascend out of the tunnel and into brakes. Now, you go pretty high up on this ascent, which is probably why it feels like it is slowing down, but there are brakes in place. I'll get back to these in a second, but after you crest this high point, you curve down and have a large sweeping turn against the water. This turn is an intense moment, but the real spectacle is off-ride. This turn is presented to passers-by with bursts of water as you go around it. The water shoots high up, and if the wind is right, can get people walking on the bridge a little wet. This is one of the most famous parts of Maverick, because of how awesome it is to watch. After this turn, you kinda have a little bit of a lull in between some rock work, but there is an excuse for the ride. There originally was a super tight and fast barrel roll inversion. During the testing phase of the ride before Cedar Point debuted it, the inversion was removed. The report was that the inversion would have put too much stress on the train track and most importantly, the riders. This delayed Maverick's opening by a few months because Intamin needed to reprofile the track with just a little bend. I don't think this is a huge loss for the ride. The layout is already so amazing that this extra inversion wouldn't have added too much. Did the inversion look to be fantastic? Yes, of course it did, but if it stayed, Maverick would have cost the park a lot of money in maintenance and the inversion was deemed possibly unsafe to guests. And at parks, safety should be the first priority, and this was definitely a case of that. Anyway, getting back to those brakes. Although not confirmed, I think these brakes were originally designed to slow the train down so that the barrel roll was not as intense. These brakes never really seem to slow down the train, and I think it's because they don't need to now that that inversion is gone. Moving on, you go through the replacement bend in the track, and then into another amazing element on the ride, a stangle dive. This element is basically just a high banking turn, but it is so fast and tight that it becomes a super intense element. By the way, if you're wondering, the element is named after Maverick's designer Warner Stengel, who designed so many roller coasters, and definitely he has designed at least one coaster that you've ridden. After this element, you do a small sweeping turn into another stangle dive, which is more intense and tight than the first one, an airtime hill, and then finally a curve into the final brake run. Something else that I'd like to note about this ride is how imposing it is, even though it's not that tall. When walking in from the left side of Frontier Town, Maverick presents itself with the aforementioned sweeping turn over the water and water cannons. The lift hill also is absolutely stunning with its distinct shaping. The ascent before the drop is not very steep, but then the drop is beyond vertical, which gives it a very unique shape. The colors fit perfectly into the Frontier Town theme, and so does the logo, station building, and surrounding plaza area. And no, Maverick is not nearly as imposing as Steel Vengeance, or even as imposing as Mean Streak was, but when you do get a glimpse of it, it is just lovely to look at and watch. This layout is just so perfect and well-rounded that it doesn't leave you really wanting more because it already delivered everything you could want in an intense coaster. Now, all this positive feedback definitely calls for some negativity, which there is some. Not much, but definitely things that I need to mention. The biggest drawback for me is that Maverick is not a completely smooth experience. There are a few rough patches which are basically just whenever there is a turn that doesn't really do anything. You can feel it in your head a little, especially in the back. I will note though that the trains are very comfortable. You sit pretty low to the track and have a comfortable padded over the shoulder restraint. The restraint system doesn't really add much to the headache. It's just the layout that induces some intense feelings. I mean, with a coaster that reaches a total positive G-force of 4.5, you're bound for at least some rough feeling sections. If I were to choose between front or back row, I'd definitely choose front. The ride is so super intense that sometimes it's a bit too much in the back, but it always feels like the perfect amount when you ride in the front. Another unfortunate thing about this coaster is that you usually have to wait a while for it. In the scenario where the park has just opened and you head to the back to get on one of the two best coasters in the park, you have to choose between Maverick and Steel Vengeance. Now for me, and many people, the choice is pretty easy. I would choose to ride Steel Vengeance over Maverick every time no matter what. So unless you are literally the first person on the Steel Vengeance train, chances are you're waiting around an hour at least to get on Steel Vengeance. After this, basically everyone who was in front of you goes to Maverick. The entrances to both rides are so close to each other that it's pretty much inevitable that most of the crowd from Steel Vengeance goes to Maverick next. So by the second hour of park opening, the first 2 hours of the Steel Vengeance line becomes the Maverick line. I usually end up seeing Maverick at a 1 or 2 hour wait, so unless you ride when everyone heads to Steel Vengeance first thing, you're not really going to want to wait too long. And if you do choose to do that, you are pretty much skipping Steel Vengeance, because my god, that line can get up to 4 hours on a random Monday. This waiting downside can be avoided by purchasing Fastlane Plus. Maverick and Steel Vengeance are not currently offered on the regular Fastlane, so you'll have to drop a significant amount. I think though that those are pretty much the only downsides to the ride. It is truly an amazing and complete package. There aren't many coasters like it very close either. I'd say the closest thing that even barely relates is Flight of Fear at Kings Island, and a closer relation would be either Lightning Run or Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. The other two coasters that are the Blitz model in America are Cheetah Hunt in Florida, which is very similar to Maverick, just more family oriented, and the future, now new for 2021, Pantheon, which will be in Virginia, and certainly looks like it will top Maverick. Pantheon is evolving the Blitz model to hopefully make it even more widespread, but most current Blitz models reside in Asia and Europe. For Maverick's final score, I give it a 9. There really isn't much to negatively critique. There is a reason that this coaster was the best at Cedar Point until the best coaster in the world showed up. Overall, this comes in at the bottom of my top 5 in the 5th spot, underneath Phantom's Revenge and above Storm Chaser. Phantom's Revenge is a smoother, more re-rideable experience than Maverick, so it barely edges it out. But Maverick has a better layout than Storm Chaser, so that's why Maverick tops it. The sheer enjoyment this coaster provides is near unmatched among others. As of right now, it is second in Ohio for me. The coaster also is second best in the park to the legendary Steel Vengeance, which will have a review out soon enough. Thanks so much for listening in on what I think of the iconic Maverick roller coaster. Please be sure to subscribe for more coaster-related content and check out other videos on my channel. More and more should be popping up from time to time and in this narrated format. Let me know in the comments what you think of Maverick and what coaster you'd like to see me review next. If you enjoy Amusement Tomorrow, you really should check out my Instagram page. I visit parks a lot, and my opinions are always changing. You will see things updated on my Instagram story and story highlights on my wall before you see them updated here. I will be attending Kings Island soon to ride Orion, so after I ride that, you can see if Maverick still upholds its second in Ohio position. You can follow my Instagram at Amusement Tomorrow, no underscores with 2 T's in the middle. Anyway, have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. All these amazing videos and this awesome Disneyland music is credited in the description, so make sure to check those channels and videos out as well. That is my Maverick review completed.